Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are immersing ourselves in what the author himself calls a genuine living nightmare.
That's putting it mildly.
We're pulling straight from the primary source material, the personal diaries of Mötley Crüe founder Nikki Sixx.
And this isn't just, a glimpse behind the rock star curtain. This is something much deeper, much darker.
Exactly. It's a document chronicling a nearly fatal addiction crisis between 1986 and 1987. This is the absolute decadent height of the band's fame, right as they were recording and getting ready for the girls, girls, girls era.
It is brutal, it's honest, and I think profoundly insightful into the mind of someone who is, for all intents and purposes, losing contact with reality.
And that's exactly our mission here. We want to use these published diaries not for the sensationalism of it all.
No, not at all.
But really as a shortcut to understanding addiction through the lens of a primary witness, the addict himself.
Right. And Sixx was very clear about his intent. He said he shared this material specifically to paint a fuller picture of what addiction really looks like.
The paranoia, the isolation.
The complete breakdown of self-respect, everything. His stated purpose in sharing this personal hell was redemptive. He said if one person is helped, it was worth it.
And he backed that up. He's donating profits from this work to the Covenant House charity. It just shows the profound shift in his perspective after he managed to survive this period.
It really does.
So before we really plunge into the specifics of 1986, I think we need to establish the clinical context that the sources lay out.
Yes, absolutely.
Because the Sixx was battling a whole constellation of devastating conditions. This wasn't just a casual drug habit.
We have to ground ourselves in these definitions because they frame the sheer gravity of his situation. First, we're discussing alcoholism. The sources characterize it as, excessive chronic consumption, often viewed as a biological disease or a compulsion.
Then there's the stimulant side of it.
Right. We're looking at the use of cocaine, that crystalline tropane alkaloid, a powerful stimulant that creates this euphoric sense of happiness and energy, but which is, of course, highly, highly addictive.
And then the main event.
The central demon here, yes, heroin, diacetylmorphine, a semi-synthetic opioid, incredibly addictive, known on the street by all those names: dope, smack, skag, H.
And the physiological facts are one thing, but it's the psychological deterioration he details that, really. I mean, that's what elevates the source material into a document of mental illness.
Indeed. We have to consider clinical depression, which is defined as a severe state of sadness or melancholia that disrupts social functioning and lasts for 2 or more weeks. And you have to remember, this is a leading cause of disability in the U.S.
But what really defines Sixx's diary entries from this time is it's the psychosis.
That's the key, a mental state where thought and perception are severely impaired. It involves terrifying hallucinations, profound paranoid delusions, and a complete loss of contact with reality.
So just to be clear for everyone listening, Nikki Sixx wasn't just occasionally sad or doing too many drugs. He was battling severe depression while simultaneously cycling through drug-induced psychosis.
At the absolute peak of his fame, the pressure cooker couldn't have been more intense.
Okay, so let's unpack the foundation of his self-destruction. Nikki Sixx didn't wait for Mötley Crüe to show him the path to chaos.
Not at all. He'd already mapped out his life's ideology based on destruction, long before fame provided the fuel for the fire.
He often referenced Iggy Pop's Search and Destroy as his lifelong mantra.
And he felt Alice Cooper's Welcome to My Nightmare was like Nostradamus predicting his future. He was primed for it.
He was a child of chaos, and he grew up to be an architect of it.
That's a great way to put it. Sixx himself described Mötley Crüe as this beautiful but ultimately dangerous fusion. He called it a toxic cocktail.
A cocktail of what?
Of rock, punk, glam, pop, but then blended with all the emotional stuff. Anger, humor, love, hate, and crucially, this bottomless pit of desire.
So he admitted the band provided the environment for his addiction.
But the core need for self-destruction, that was something he felt he was born with. He said he was strong-willed, determined, and entirely willing to put himself in harm's way for the betterment of chaos, confusion, and rebellion.
When you look at his progression, it wasn't a slow slide into general substance abuse. It was very targeted.
It was a clear prioritization, a search for the ultimate emotional painkiller.
He was very clear about the distinction between the drugs he used.
Very. Alcohol, acid, cocaine, these, he wrote, were just affairs. They were fun, they created highs, but they didn't satisfy that deep emotional vacuum he felt.
But heroin was different.
When he was introduced to heroin, he immediately characterized it differently. His words were, "It was true love."
That language is so important.
It's vital. He wasn't just chasing a rush. He was chasing a relationship, a comfort, a form of ultimate self-medication that was rooted in this profound emotional deficit.
And he had his own deeply personal explanation for this deficit, his 1-2-3 theory for why he became an addict.
He laid it out very plainly in the sources. 1,
Yeah.
a shitty childhood, specifically the abandonment by his father at the age of 3.
That's the cornerstone.
It is. 2, his mother continually shuttled him off to his grandparents every single time she moved on with a new boyfriend or a new chapter in her life.
And 3.
And 3, he concluded he was simply born an addict. He believed his fundamental wiring was faulty, which manifested as this severe anger and a burning desire for revenge against the world.
It's that feeling of betrayal.
Absolutely.
Wow.
He felt betrayed by the two people who were supposed to be his protectors, and that anger just became the fuel for his addiction.
Now, this chaos was shared, of course, especially with Tommy Lee, his toxic twin.
Right.
But even within this hyper-decadent bubble, Sixx stood out for his willingness to just descend further into the abyss than anyone else.
Tommy Lee was very candid about their partnership in narcotics. They pushed every limit imaginable, often combining drugs to achieve, novel highs or novel lows.
But Lee noted a crucial difference.
He did. He said that while all the crew members visited that dark fucking place over time, Nikki seemed to like it there more than any of us.
And Tommy Lee's own experience with heroin is telling.
Very telling. He shot heroin once and was immediately repelled. He described the pain, the immediate rush, the projectile vomiting, and then just passing out. It was a physical reaction that screamed, "Never again."
But for Nikki
Sixx took that exact same horror and embraced it daily.
Which brings us to the core of the psychological deterioration described in his diaries around the girl sessions.
This is where it gets really dark.
He recognized that, in his words, the junk just isn't enough anymore. And that led him to escalating to speedballs, shooting heroin and cocaine at the same time.
And that combination is a chemical catalyst for psychosis. His diary entries from this period document his complete and utter loss of reality.
The paranoia just intensifies to a frightening degree.
It does. He described his bedroom closet not as a storage space, but as a haven. This tiny, dark, enclosed space became his sanctuary.
Life there.
It was where he kept his dope and his loaded gun. He felt safe there because he was convinced that people were watching him through the windows, or even worse, that cops were peering in from the trees outside.
And this wasn't just in his head. I mean, his management even confirms the reality-warping intensity of these delusions.
Oh, yeah. Doug Thaler, the manager, he recounted receiving these late-night or early-morning calls from Sixx, sometimes multiple times a week.
Telling him what?
Informing him that there were Mexicans and midgets in his garden watching him. This wasn't some funny drug-induced oddity. This was acute, terror-inducing paranoia that made him believe he was under constant surveillance.
The insanity extended beyond just his personal fear. It corrupted his relationship with the very substance he craved, leading to what he called the insane cycle.
This is a perfect window into the complete breakdown of an addict's rationalization. It's fascinatingly irrational.
Explain the cycle.
Okay, so Sixx would buy massive amounts of drugs in bulk, sometimes enough to last for weeks, but then the cocaine-fueled paranoia would spike, making him utterly convinced the police were about to break down his door.
So in a panic,
In a moment of total panic, the only solution he could see was to destroy the evidence. He would flush the entire, very expensive stash of drugs right down the toilet.
and he admits doing this sometimes twice in one night.
Twice. Losing thousands and thousands of dollars and instantly triggering intense, painful withdrawal. Even his dealer, a guy named Jason, was exhausted by this cycle. He asked him, "What the fuck is wrong with you flushing drugs anyway?"
It's just, the logic is so twisted. His fear of being controlled or caught, that fundamental reaction to authority tied to his childhood, was literally more powerful than the physical need for the drug.
Exactly. He'd rather suffer immediate, agonizing withdrawal than risk capture.
That dynamic is so revealing. The need for revenge and rebellion he harbored was constantly at war with this paralyzing fear of authority.
And the physical degradation he describes, it's captured in that horrifying anecdote of the Denny's fix in early 1987.
This anecdote, the Denny's on Gower and Sunset, it just strips away every single ounce of rock star glamour.
It's the bottom. He's sitting on the floor of a disgusting public restroom, needing a fix desperately. He uses a Pepsi bottle cap as a cooker. But here's a key, visceral detail.
The water.
The water. He notes that he fills that cap with water from the toilet bowl, specifically choosing not to use the water from the sink.
And his reasoning for that is just, it's pure psychosis.
It's pure psychosis.
Yeah.
The sink water, he explained, was too close to the cops. The level of delusion required to choose toilet water over sink water based on a belief that the sink might be bugged or monitored. It shows a mind operating so far outside any rational survival-based parameters.
And the moment of the fix itself is chilling.
He draws up the shot, administers it, and immediately the profound self-loathing hits. He wrote simply, "The studio was fine after that. I just felt dead." He wasn't even high. He was just numb.
That collapse of hygiene and self-respect, coupled with that immediate feeling of emptiness afterward, it really illustrates how the drugs had stopped being a source of pleasure.
They'd become a source of desperate, self-inflicted misery. Just a tool to stop the pain for a few hours.
So, the environment surrounding Mötley Crüe, it wasn't one designed for rehabilitation.
Not even close. It was engineered to amplify chaos. Let's look at the key players who were either feeding into or being consumed by this destructive feedback loop.
The band structure itself was a study in profound codependence and conflict.
Absolutely. You have Tommy Lee, the toxic twin. He was Sixx's primary partner in excess, bringing this wild, infectious energy and positivity that Sixx thrived on.
And in exchange?
In exchange, Sixx fed Lee a steady stream of darkness and edginess. They created this chemical equilibrium of destruction.
But the relationship with the singer, Vince Neil, that was defined by mutual resentment.
Yeah, but through.
And Vince actually admits that Sixx's addiction served a purpose for him during the creative process.
It's one of the most cynical revelations in the entire book. Sixx and Vince spent years hating each other, and Vince was frustrated by Sixx, the band's prolific songwriter, constantly criticizing his vocal recordings.
So when Sixx was strung out,
Vince confessed that during the girl sessions, when Sixx was strung out and frequently in the bathroom shooting up, that suited me fine. It was the perfect time for me to record my vocals.
unbelievable.
The core dynamic of the band was so dysfunctional that the singer actively welcomed his chief songwriter's near-fatal addiction because it meant he wouldn't be bird-dogged or constantly harassed and criticized. The addiction actually provided Vince with professional peace.
And then there's Mick Mars, the guitarist. He was the quiet, miserable outlier.
Yeah, Mick was sober, but he became the punching bag for Sixx and Lee's drug-fueled mean streak.
He was the conscience of the band, but
nobody listened. He hated the heroin use from the very start. He saw Sixx's behavior as almost a cartoonish role-played the part of Sid Vicious, completely ignoring that Sid Vicious died from his habit.
And when Sixx and Lee were loaded,
they became mean, gnarly guys, and all that meanness was focused on Mick and his girlfriend, Amy Canyon. Doc McGee even confirmed that Mick was the easiest target because he was the quietest and never fought back. His misery became an easy source of entertainment for them.
these same self-destructive patterns dominated Sixx's romantic life, particularly his on-again, off-again engagement to Vanity.
Prince's former protege, yeah. Evangelist Denise Matthews.
Their connection was instantaneous and completely drug-centered.
Sixx summarized it perfectly. Misfits attract misfits.
Yeah.
Vanity was the one who taught him how to really freebase, a highly efficient and intensely addictive form of cocaine use.
So she escalated his habit.
In some ways, yes. Sixx described their relationship as a shared insanity, a mad, neurotic, paranoid, psychotic, disturbing relationship fueled by twin egos and just massive amounts of drugs.
Vanity's later perspective, though, it offers this chilling insight into the universal physical toll of this lifestyle.
It really does. It proves that even if you're a rock star, physics still applies to your body.
What happened to her?
Her journey after this period revealed the profound, non-discriminatory physical cost of the addiction. As evangelist Denise Matthews, she spoke openly about her belief that addiction led her into demonic, psychic, and witchcraft bondage.
But medically,
She recounted a shocking crisis stemming from her cocaine use. A heart attack, a stroke, total kidney failure, and severely high blood pressure that peaked at 250 over 190.
250 over 190.
Doctors gave her 3 days to live. This confirms the physical reality of the insanity. Sixx was also enduring, even if his assessment of her at the time was simply that her struggle with God and cocaine was driving her insane.
So now let's move to the people who are supposedly responsible for their well-being. Management.
This is where it gets truly bizarre. Doc McGee and Doug Thaler practiced what they called full contact management.
Full contact management, what does that even mean?
It means exactly what it sounds like. Doc McGee called Sixx the most extreme person he ever met, someone who operated under this absolute rejection of authority. I'm going to do exactly what I want to do and fuck everybody else.
So management's solution wasn't therapy or an intervention.
It was physical control. They employed Fred Saunders, a former Hells Angel who served as head of security, and, ironically, a secondary cocaine supplier for the band.
And management explicitly incentivized violence against their own clients.
This is the part that's hard to believe. Fred Saunders admitted that he was told by Doc McGee he'd get a bonus every time he hit one of the band members.
A bonus. To assault his employers.
A bonus. And Saunders' list of assaults is staggering. Breaking Tommy's nose, breaking Sixx's ribs, and beating the shit out of Vince many times.
This isn't just dysfunctional, it's an ethical vacuum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The people hired to protect the band were literally being paid extra to assault them. It reinforced this idea that the chaos was marketable, even if it was debilitating. The management created a system where the wild image was protected, even at the cost of the band members' actual safety and sobriety.
And the ultimate proof that this chaos was unsustainable, though, lies in the creative output for the Girls album. Sixx, normally a songwriting machine, struggled tremendously.
He confessed to just recycling old Aerosmith riffs and writing pretty lame songs because his focus was entirely on getting well enough to avoid withdrawal.
And the co-manager, Doug Thaler, he was brutally honest about it.
He was.
Where?
He claimed the producer Tom Werman made that record because Sixx just couldn't write enough good songs. Thaler specifically cited one of Sixx's contributions, a song called Hollywood Nights, as absolute dreck.
This reveals a secondary tragedy of the addiction, doesn't it? The stifling of genuine talent.
It does. And Sixx later came to this terrifying realization about why his output wasn't challenged.
Which was?
He realized that despite writing substandard material, no one, not the managers, not the producer, not the record label, dared challenge him on the quality of his work.
Why not?
Because they were terrified of his drug-fueled volatility. They were more afraid of confronting the raging gun-toting addict than they were of releasing a creatively weak album.
So he had weaponized his addiction.
To the point where he was completely insulated from consequence, even professional criticism. And that just perpetuated his cycle of self-entitlement and destruction.
So when we look at the intensity of Sixx's psychosis and his need for revenge against the world, we have to look back at the origins of his emotional damage.
We have to.
Sixx himself identified his childhood as shitty, specifically focusing on the conflicting narratives surrounding his mother, Dina Richards, and his grandparents, Nona and Tom Rees.
This section is critical. It provides the backstory for the immense head drive that addiction eventually corrupted. His counselor, Bob Timmons, believed Sixx was fundamentally self-medicating the overwhelming emotional pain from his fractured childhood.
And the conflicting narratives from his family were incredibly damaging.
They eroded his ability to trust his own sense of reality.
So let's start with that central conflict, the contradictory stories about his mother, Dina Richards.
Dina Richards told a story of genuine maternal love. She claimed she loved Nikki, but that her mother, Nona, and her sisters plotted against me to steal my son. She claimed she left Frank, Nikki's father, when Nikki was an infant because of his drinking and drugging.
But that wasn't the only story.
Not by a long shot. Her father, Tom Rees, Nikki's maternal grandfather, told a completely different, much darker story.
And the grandfather's account is one of neglect and severe instability for the young child.
Tom Rees described Dina as wild. He claimed she was constantly running off with new guys, truck drivers, Italian guys, and leaving Nikki with them for periods up to a year at a time. He claimed Dina would throw him out every time she moved on.
Did he say why she was like this?
Rees believed Dina was flying half of the time from her own drug use and was intellectually impaired, saying she didn't have a brain in her head. While Rees and Nona tried to shield Nikki from outright malice toward his mother, that pattern of instability and abandonment was undeniably present in his young life.
That is just a devastating setup for a child, trying to reconcile a mother's claims of love with the undeniable reality of being repeatedly discarded. It creates a profound internalized conflict.
Exactly. Sixx was left holding what he called a psychological garbage truck full of feelings that was starting to rot. He felt abandoned by both parents.
His father, who just vanished for 5 years.
Only to return to check out his son, to see if he was worth integrating into his new life, and then his mother, who repeatedly shuttled him off. He felt he had no anchor.
And that resulted in this deep, corrosive fear of intimacy and control.
That he later projected onto everyone in his life, from managers to girlfriends, and even those fictional Mexicans and midgets in his garden.
And there's another layer of trauma here. The deeply tragic story of his lost sister, Lisa, which reinforced his fear that family could simply vanish.
Oh, this story is heartbreaking. Sixx wrote about Lisa, who was born a year after him and then just disappeared. He spent his entire life troubled by her vanished whereabouts, only learning much later in the late 1990s that she was in a sanatorium.
And his mother eventually explained what happened.
She did. Dina Richards confirmed the medical reality. Lisa was born with an extreme case of Down syndrome and severe accompanying health issues. The doctors advised Dina to surrender her legal rights and make Lisa a ward of the state of California, warning her that Lisa would never walk or feed herself and required constant specialized care.
A completely impossible situation for a young single mother.
Impossible. But that decision, heartbreaking as it was, clearly registered to young Nikki Sixx as another act of abandonment. It confirmed his darkest fear, that if you were problematic or difficult, you could be erased.
The doctors told her to just walk away.
Their advice was, Lisa doesn't know you. She will never be anything but what she is today. Walk away and never look back. For a sensitive and already abandoned young boy, this tragedy reinforced the idea that his family had a tendency to discard those who required too much. It became another heavy layer in that garbage pile of anxiety and anger he carried.
Amidst all this chaos and neglect, his grandmother Nona was the single point of unconditional love.
Nona was everything to him. He was incredibly close to her, stating she loved me and was better than a mother to me.
Which is why her death in 1986 was such a trigger.
It was a major psychological trigger for the intense escalation of his drug use that followed.
And the final act of guilt that really haunts this diary is his inability to face her passing.
When Nona died, Sixx was too string out and wasted to fly to the funeral. The guilt was instant and it was paralyzing. He couldn't face his past, his family, or the reality of his loss while sober.
So instead,
he got repped in front of the tube, feeling ashamed and guilty. The best he could do in his incapacitated state was write the song Nona for her, which appeared on Girls, Girls, Girls.
That moment, the inability to honor the one person who truly loved him because he was trapped in addiction,
was a real turning point in his descent. He chose the needle over his last connection to sanity.
So we have a man fueled by deep trauma, guilt, and psychosis. And then he's placed on a massive world tour, the rock and roll carousel, an environment engineered to amplify every single destructive tendency.
The Girls, Girls, Girls tour culture was self-designed decadence. Mötley Crüe insisted that their environment match their mythology. Their hired jet, for instance, had to be custom-painted black.
And have a naked girl riding a bomb painted on the side.
Exactly. This sets the stage. They demanded an environment that reflected and reinforced their own self-image of depravity and entitlement.
On that tour, cocaine seems to have been less a drug and more a mandatory accessory.
It became the official tour currency. They even nicknamed it Krell, after the energy source from the movie Heavy Metal, because it was the fuel source for their entire operation.
And Fred Saunders, the head of security, was also the supplier.
He was the Krell man. The tour earned the moniker the Airport Blowjob Tour because of the groupies waiting at private airports. It normalized this extreme level of drug use and debauchery as just perks of the job.
The environment wasn't only defined by stimulants, but also by heavy use of prescription pills, specifically Halcyon.
The 80s Xanax, yeah. That led to complete temporal blackouts.
Tommy Lee described the routine.
He did. Combining 4 or 5 Halcyons with Jack Daniels. They dubbed the mix zombie dust. The result was full-on blackouts, where they would wake up having completely lost hours of memory, often having pissed my bed in the process.
Sixx even took it a step further.
Of course he did. He admitted to crushing up Halcyons and mixing them with blow in a vial, a chillingly scientific approach to dysfunction, chasing the perfect chemical equilibrium between sedation and stimulant. It usually just resulted in a full-fledged break from reality.
And this atmosphere enabled truly cruel behavior toward those perceived as weaker, primarily Mick Mars and his girlfriend, Emmy Canyon.
The torment was constant. Sixx and Tommy found endless amusement in pouring food, drinks, and clothes dye all over them.
The sheer violent nihilism of Sixx is captured in that one moment during a jet barrel roll.
Oh, that story's disturbing. Sixx stood up, pulled down his pants, and just yelled at Emmy, who was terrified. "Fuck you, God, if you're so real, strike me down." And the more she cried, the more intensely he indulged in this power trip.
Tommy Lee tried to dismiss it.
He tried to dismiss it as them just being really retarded, stupid kids. But Sixx was clearly seeking a confrontation with any form of authority, divine or mortal, driven by that core need for revenge.
This volatility spilled directly into his romantic life, creating the toxic environment that inspired the infamous song, "You're All I Need."
He wrote that song after attempting to kick heroin with his then-girlfriend Nicole. An attempt that failed, obviously.
And after the breakup, his own guilt was instantly projected onto her.
His paranoia just fixated on this delusion that Nicole had cheated on him with Jack Wagner, the pretty boy actor from General Hospital.
It's a classic addict psychological mechanism, isn't it?
Textbook. The inability to handle personal guilt leads to the fabrication of moral injury inflicted by the external world. He admitted the fact that he cheated on her, quote, 200 times, didn't even enter his mental equation.
And the revenge plot he enacted was a dark mirror of the murderous lyrics he wrote.
The psychological manipulation was intense. He invited Nicole over, supposedly to hear a new song. It starts with this beautiful, delicate piano music.
And then he reveals the lyrics.
The brutal, murderous lyrics. I loved you, so I set you free. I had to take your life. But killing you helped me keep you home. Nicole was, rightly, horrified, called him a fucking asshole.
Sixx then took the next insane step.
He hired local bikers to wait outside the television studio where Jack Wagner worked and break his kneecaps.
And the bizarre, coincidental outcome of that order is almost darkly comic.
It is. His biker contact called him later to apologize because they hadn't managed to find Wagner. But then Sixx is reading the paper later that day and sees a headline. Jack Wagner had coincidentally fallen on set and broken his knee.
And Sixx believed.
He was immediately convinced it was divine retribution for his own pain. It proved to him that his chaotic, paranoid will could bend reality. It confirmed his status as untouchable, reinforcing the self-entitlement that kept him trapped in the addiction cycle.
The absolute peak of physical and psychological insanity, outside of the overdose itself, seems to have occurred during the Canadian leg of the tour.
When they ran completely out of drugs.
Yes.
Tommy Lee remembers this clearly as the moment they truly realized they were insane. Instead of simply drinking their stash of Jack Daniels, Sixx and Tommy sat up all night shooting up the whiskey.
Injecting whiskey.
Injecting alcohol directly into their veins. Lee recalled thinking, what the fuck was that all about? It didn't even occur to us that we could always just drink the JD. The desperation was so acute and their minds so warped by the culture of the needle that they defaulted to the ritual of injection.
Even when the substance itself was non-injectable and profoundly dangerous.
Exactly.
This complete loss of control culminated in the infamous bullet train incident in Japan.
This incident is such a powerful symbol of American rock star entitlement colliding violently with Japanese professional order. Sixx and Tommy were drunk, high, pouring drinks on Mick and Amy.
And Sixx reached his boiling point.
Of anger and violence, yes. He threw a bottle of Jack Daniels down the train, smashing over dozens of Japanese commuters. Vince Neil was totally embarrassed, witnessing Sixx and Tommy yelling, "Fuck you, you lost the war," at 60-year-old Japanese businessmen.
And the arrest that followed was pure crew chaos.
When the police arrested him, Sixx was taken into custody. In the police captain's office, he decided to ask the captain a vulgar, insulting question about his anatomy.
And the translator?
The Japanese translator, fully aware of the diplomatic catastrophe Sixx was creating, completely softened the statement. Instead of translating the insult, the translator looked at the police captain and said simply that Sixx had apologized.
He still did jail time, though.
He did, but the cultural friction and the manager's ability to manipulate the translation, it just shows the profound bubble of chaos he lived in, a bubble that kept him mostly free from real-world consequences until the ultimate consequence arrived.
By late 1987, the dynamic of Sixx's drug use had fundamentally shifted.
It had. He was no longer using drugs to achieve euphoria. He was using them simply to stay normal and avoid the agony of withdrawal.
Doc McGee recognized this as the classic dependency cycle.
The junkie relies on the drug to simply function and take away the profound physical pain. Bob Timmons, his counselor, correctly analyzed that Sixx was locked in a cycle of dependency fueled by self-medicating his childhood pain.
And this inevitable progression of dependence leads directly to the ultimate crisis point. The overdose in December 1987.
Sixx was at Franklin Plaza with friends, including some people from Guns N' Roses. He took a speedball, heroin, and cocaine.
And Slash's girlfriend, Sally McLaughlin, she witnessed it.
She did. She saw Sixx take the shot and immediately turn blue. The dealer instantly panicked, shouted, "Nikki's dead," and fled the apartment, jumping out the window and over the balcony.
The scene that followed was just chaos.
Complete chaos. Steven Adler, the drummer for Guns N' Roses, helped drag Sixx's blue body into the bathroom, but terrified, also fled, leaving Sally alone with him. Slash, who was screaming drunk, came in and reminded of a friend named Todd who had recently died from an overdose, started yelling Todd while smashing up the bathroom in a rage,
Paramedics arrive
and pronounced Sixx dead at the scene.
But the sources describe a miraculous, if highly charged, intervention that brought him back.
Sally recounted that two teenage girls outside the apartment, Mötley Crüe fans, heard the commotion and started crying hysterically, begging the paramedics to try again.
And they did.
The sources suggest that this emotional display convinced the paramedics, who had already declared him deceased, to try one more time. They revived him with 2 shots of adrenaline, shooting it directly into his heart. Nikki Sixx had died, was pronounced dead, and was pulled back to life.
And the legend of his immediate rebirth and escape is one of the most famous rock and roll tales ever told.
It's the perfect, darkly manic punctuation mark on that entire period. Sixx came to in the hospital, ripped out the IVs and tubes, and just staggered into the parking lot, wearing only his leather pants.
And who gave him a ride?
2 teenage girls who were sitting outside crying around a candle because they had just heard his obituary on the radio. They saw him and gave him a lift home.
His first act upon arrival was quintessentially narcissistic and darkly humorous.
He changed his answering machine message to, "Hey, it's Nikki. I'm not here because I'm dead."
But the power of addiction, even after being brought back from the grave, was instantly reinforced by his second act.
Despite having literally died and been resurrected moments before, Sixx immediately found a hidden stash. His roadie, Tim Lucy, noted he used to hide drugs in the brass balls atop his bedposts.
And he used it.
He shot up that stash and passed out. He had defied death, only to immediately choose dependence again. The physiological and psychological grip of the addiction was just more powerful than the fear of mortality.
So if death itself couldn't stop him, what finally provided the necessary friction to break the cycle, even just temporarily?
The true, genuine turning point, according to the diaries, came 2 days later on Christmas Day, 1987. Sixx woke up, and despite the previous night's relapse, he felt this inexplicable shift.
And he wrote,
"I want to live, and I don't know why." He felt something profound had finally snapped. He chose life over his instincts to run and hide inside a needle or a coffin. He made the conscious decision to put that diary away and start a new one, marking a decisive separation from the chaos of 1986 and 1987.
So when we synthesize all of this, the contrast between the external reality and his internal landscape is just jarring.
Completely. Externally, Mötley Crüe was selling out arenas, they had a #2 album, they were global superstars. Internally, Sixx was fighting psychosis, battling clinical depression, dealing with profound abandonment issues, and nearly died multiple times.
The central realization he came to later was that no single factor was responsible for the disaster.
He summarized it as accumulative. He realized it wasn't just the drugs, the alcohol, the pills, the fame, or the childhood. It was accumulative. The trauma, the environment, and the chemical dependency all just piled up until the entire edifice of his life collapsed.
The sources confirm that his journey after surviving death was not a sudden, smooth transition to recovery.
No, not at all. He had bumps and relapses, but he did achieve meaningful reconciliation in some key areas of his life.
His commitment to sobriety required constant work.
It did. And while his life has had its challenges, including his marriage to Donna DeRico ending in divorce, he did seek to resolve the core trauma. He made peace with the memory of his absent father by visiting his grave.
Finally allowing himself to let go of that anger.
That anger and pain that had defined his identity since childhood. He realized the anger he harbored wasn't killing his father, it was, in his words, killing me.
What's truly remarkable is the profound change in his philosophy. A total inversion of his former identity as the man who only consumed, took, and would go out of his way to bust people's balls.
He now cherishes a mantra that the addict in him once would have loathed. You got to give it away to keep what you got. He found that in order to maintain his happiness and sobriety, he had to constantly engage in acts of giving and contribution, whether through his charity work or simply mentoring others.
For a man whose entire life was built on taking and consumption,
this new agenda, this focus on giving, was the core of his transformation.
This leaves us with the final, fascinating question that Sixx himself pondered in the aftermath of these diaries.
He realized he was already a sick fuck and didn't need drugs to be extreme. So he questioned why he chose the worst destiny imaginable.
Was the descent into hell a necessary path?
Was this destruction simply part of a master plan to expose the raw nerve endings of dysfunction so I could heal? He eventually concluded that addicts often think everything is about them, but he believes that living now by doing what he wants, which means prioritizing a healthier, sober life and contributing positively, is the most rock and roll thing about me.
So the ultimate question for you to mull over is whether that level of destruction fueled by trauma and abandonment is truly a prerequisite for deep self-discovery, or if it is simply a painful detour that carries a far too high and often lethal cost.